Hello, greetings, and first let me check if we have sound real quick. Excellent. So, let me explain a little bit about how this presentation is going to work. I'm going to have the PowerPoint in front of me. I will submit the PowerPoint and a link to the video in the email. And I will be looking at the PowerPoint with annotations to the video to explain what slide I will be viewing. And at that point, I would just ask for the viewer to look through the PowerPoint as I go through the presentation. That way, we won't encounter too many problems. And I'll also be drawing things right on to my little paper here. And I would have had a whiteboard in front of me, but circumstances sort of prevented it, and ignore all my calculations and stuff. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Now, my presentation, I decided, for ecotourism proposed is the San Francisco Mountains, specifically more around the Inner Basin area. And the reason I decided to do this is that I feel there's already a lot of infrastructure for the San Francisco Basin. Well, not so much the basin, but the mountain itself, as the San Francisco Peaks, and right around the local cultures associated with it, and the local activities. Snowball, I know, has kind of a monopoly on it, but a lot of people don't realize the full aspects of the mountain, like how they always call it the peaks, even though it's actually one mountain, and how important the Inner Basin is to the local towns of Flagstaff and Williams, and just what is the nature behind the mountain and the Inner Basin. So, I feel that's something that we could certainly explore into. So, let's begin. So, the San Francisco Volcanic Field is located just north of Flagstaff, alongside Sunset Crater, a bit south of Espy Crater. It's within the volcanic field. It's the most prominent feature in the volcanic field, as the San Francisco Volcanic Field. And you can reach there from going from Flagstaff, going on Highway 180, or Highway 89, going around or up Snowball Road from there. And some infrastructure could probably be included to get around to the Inner Basin area. I'm not sure how well established that already is, but that could be something for the ecotourism project ahead. And moving on. Oh yes, and it's also, aside from Flagstaff, you've got Williams off to the west, and further down south, Phoenix, past Oak Creek Canyon, etc. And it's in the Colorado Plateau. So we're just north of the Mogollon Rim of the Colorado Plateau, and it will be, from the top of the area, it'll be easy to see kind of the plateau as a whole. It could be good to go into the plateau as a whole, especially from the San Francisco mountain itself. And moving on, some history behind the mountain. We've got two aspects to its history. There's sort of the human history associated with it, and its more geologic history. And we'll start with the geologic history. In the geologic history, it was believed to have formed about 1 million years ago, and it was active as a volcanic system until about 0.4 million years ago, we believe. And during that time, it had a variety of eruptions, which over time shaped it into the large mountain. Eventually, there was an eruption which caused it to take its distinctive shape, and then it became an extinct volcano at about 0.4, as we said, and it became eroded down over time to what we now have, the Inner Basin. And so, Native American cultures have lived in this area for centuries. There's a huge amount of culture associated with it, and a lot of that remains very significant even today, as anyone around the area will be able to tell you. But around 4 centuries ago, in 1629, it was the Spanish explorers from probably from down south, I believe, made it up here into this area, and they explored the mountain and eventually named it the San Francisco Mountain after the Saint Francis who was the head of their group, or who had been the head of their group as a revered figure. And over time, a number of other discoveries were made, such as the springs that are around the area, and and as Flagstaff itself developed, the mountain continued to have quite a significant presence on the population. So, in terms of Native American culture, it's considered one of the four sacred mountains out of a system of mountains around the the western United States that forms one cardinal direction each. In this case, the San Francisco Mountain is the western direction. Um, and prayers and rituals around the mountain are made for harvest, and there is a method that was used to calculate the winter solstice, which I could not find much information about, unfortunately, but that if we could investigate that further, that could definitely be something interesting to talk about within the tour, maybe as a little activity even. And one thing that's notable about the mountain is because of its incredible size, it contains 4 of 7 ecological life zones, and these were first documented about 50 years ago. Of the 7 life zones, we have that are not 3 of them are not included. Those would be the tropical zone at the lowest elevation, the lower Sonoran and upper Sonoran, which you can see further south in Arizona, below the Mogollon Rim. That's the desert environment, and the other 4 are represented well by the tree line, especially. The tree line is a good indicator of the transition between each zone, as trees can only grow in certain elevations, climates, all these restrictions, etc. And in terms of local plant life, we start with the transition zone, which is where the famous Ponderosa Forest is located in. There's also a variety of some elm trees and some spruces, and especially the aspens are notable. They are within the transition zone. Moving up, we have the Canadian zone, which is mostly made of mixed conifers, various kinds, some more elms and birch trees in other climates, especially. And further going up, we're starting to get into areas a lot of people don't get into. We've got subalpine conifer forests, where we've got the really tough conifers going, some blue spruce, things like that. And further up, where the tree line basically disappears completely and hardly anything can grow, is the Arctic alpine. And this is important because this is the only place in Arizona with the Arctic alpine zone, if I'm not mistaken, of the alpine, which consists of alpine tundra. So it could be, because these zones are fairly distinct. It would be simple in taking day trips to go up through the zones and talk about how each of the zones is like, ecology, forestry related things, and I suppose it could depend on the level of scope we're looking for. Like the Arctic alpine is very high up, and depending on what sort of resources we would be looking at and what physical characteristics of who we would want to attract and things like that. So, but moving on, story time. The geology behind the San Francisco Mountain is fairly simple. As we've said, it's an extinct volcano. It was a composite volcano, also called stratovolcano, which is made up of alternating layers of ash and lava that was created through multiple eruptions, as we've said. Because it's a and there's a composite or stratovolcano. Its primary characteristic is its composition is intermediate, which means that it is between the felsic and mafic ends of the lava spectrum, which means it contains rocks from basalt all the way up to rhyolite, and it also has intermediate rocks like dacite, which is formed from nearby lava domes such as Mount Eldon, and andesite, a typical intermediate rock found in intermediate igneous areas. Because of the specific combinations of gases and compositions of the magma, the eruptions are very pyroclastic, which means they're explosive. They like to explode, and these explosive catastrophic eruptions are less frequent than less eruptions. They have a nice inverse relationship between the explosivity of the eruption with the amount of eruptions that occur throughout time. But we believe that a number of eruptions have occurred over its lifetime, And eventually that built the mountain up more and more